watching Terry Z Productions.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Connect 4. I'm Talent.
I'm Nick.
And we're going to get right into it. Nick,
Right.
And full disclosure, this is Nick DiMauro. He is my uncle.
It's true.
Unfortunately, it's true. It's like, I am your father. No!
I'm from Long Island. Originally, I was born in Pennsylvania, but grew up on Long Island.
How old were you
I
when
was
you
five?
were 5?
And then after that, I came here to do this. Now, a lot of stuff happened along the way. I don't know. I mean, I went to school. I did college for 4 years. I got a degree in music. I went into audio engineering for a while and music production. I guess my favorite part was producing singer-songwriters that didn't have a lot of direction or were seeking direction. So that whole creative process was probably the most fun part.
Working with a musician, being able to help influence the product.
Yeah, like listen to most musicians know what they don't know that they don't realize they know what they want. They think they don't know what they want. But if you listen to enough of their songs, it starts to emerge like what direction they're really wanting to go. That was always my favorite part, was just by giving somebody feedback about which songs I liked and why. That was enough for them to realize, oh yeah, this is definitely what I want to do.
So,
like, I want to go this way or that way musically.
Let's hit that. How did you get into that position even? Was it right after college, in college?
No, it was much later. It was like, I had already had sort of a small career working at a hospital for 5 or 6 years. And then just as like a techie, because I've always been a techie.
Runs in the family.
Yeah, we're all geeks. We're all like techno geeks, basically. Starting with my dad, going down. But then I started to, if a piece of music hit me a certain way, and it just really, like if I just really felt it, I felt compelled to talk about it with the composer. And there's nothing a musician or a songwriter likes more than somebody taking a genuine interest in what they do.
Yes,
I mean,
that's what they really do. That's what they do it for.
Of course, totally. So as long as it was genuine on my part, I never said I liked something that I didn't like.
Yes.
Or I may have said it very much in glancing, but I would never sit and have a deep conversation with someone about what they do unless I genuinely liked it, and I felt moved by it. And I always just wanted to add to it somehow, I wanted to add to it, but also make sure that it got produced the way it wanted to be produced rather than how I wanted it to be produced. And to me, that's what real production is, right? Everything you do is in service to the art.
Yes.
Everything.
Totally. No, seriously. I just had this conversation with people not that long ago. When it comes to writing, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
don't. It's not your. After a certain. Yeah, you started out. You have an idea, but after a while, it's not your idea.
That's right.
It becomes something, and you.
It has a life of its own, and as good parent or bad parent that you are, you're either going to nurture it or kill it. And so it's I felt that way as a producer too. That. This song, it hit me really great, and so now how can it hit everybody else? I have to be so careful not to put something in there that was my idea. I know that sounds crazy, but it can't be coming from me. If it does, then I'm failing the process. It has to be what I know was supposed to be there, or what I know, well, you know how it is. If you feel like you're particularly inspired that day artistically, by the end of the day, if you come up with something, you look back on it and go, oh man, that's some of the best work I've ever done. You know that there was almost none of you in it.
No,
right?
I was just channeling whatever.
It just came out. That's how I feel.
So how did you get to that from?
Well, I was blessed because I had a lot of technical skill. For whatever reason, I can look at all this equipment and understand how it works and why.
You're like
and what's the best way to use it. Like, I understand basics about audio function like equalization and compression. Those are like key things, right? And everything that your ears do is on some level manipulating the frequency or the dynamics, because that's all it really has.
Okay, can you please do me a favor? How long, is there any way you could summarize in like 60 seconds or less equalization, compression?
Yeah, I don't have to. Everybody already knows it.
Well, yeah, but my audience might not. And it might be cool just to hear the
there's
words.
lots
Look
of
right into that camera.
So we can hear some low stuff and some high stuff. And, you know, the higher your range and the lower your range goes, that's the frequency range you hear. And so when I record something, I want as much of those frequencies that exist in nature to make it to your ears,
to your ear
when
hole.
when you're hearing back. Yeah, when you're listening back, right. So there's some knobs and buttons and things that you can press on equipment that nurture that, bring that along. Some of the really basic things are frequency range and dynamic range. You know, the difference between the quietest thing you hear and the loudest thing you hear. That's dynamic range. And then there's frequency range, which is the lowest frequency to the highest frequency. And if you basically just manipulating those two things, no easy task, but that's basically what you manipulate to make stuff sound a certain way.
It really is no easy task, and you have to have an ear for it.
I think I was lucky. I could translate what I felt in my soul. I could use the tools, or I knew how to use the tools around me to capture that and hand it to somebody else to listen to. And that to me is like maybe the most important skill you can have as an audio engineer / music producer. Because I was never strictly into the techie stuff, and I was never strictly into the creative stuff. I had a deep passion for both. And I didn't know a lot of other people around that did that. That's why they hire teams of people. They have to hire like producers and stuff who are totally musical people, don't want to touch the mixing console, very technical people who understand that stuff, and then somebody in between to translate. And so that's a minimum of 3 people right there. And you talk about the telephone game, like how distorted stuff gets by the end.
Yeah.
Well, that you're all, and then you talk about the concept of being in service of the song, trying not to put too much. So already you're set up for failure.
It's a wonder anything ever makes it.
and it's no wonder why so much of it is stuff I don't care about and don't want to listen to.
Very true.
And it doesn't have anything to do with the original concept of the song either. That might have been brilliant, but I'll never know because it didn't make it.
So where was the first studio you ever worked in?
The first one, I built a small studio. Couldn't afford to work in a studio, so we built one instead. At my friend's house, a guy named John, John Tabaka. I don't know if you ever got a chance to talk to him.
I know him. Okay. I'm not well, but over the years.
Yeah. We met in college, and we had very similar musical tastes. And he was a natural at recording stuff. He was just a natural at it. He was way beyond anything I was capable of at the time. Mind you, I've surpassed him by millions of times by now. But back then, he was much, much superior, vastly superior. So we built a small 8-track recording studio. For those of you who don't know what that is, back in the old days, you recorded stuff it was stored on tape. I know you probably know what cassettes are. You may have heard of those, but before that were reel-to-reel tapes.
You guys used reel-to-reel?
Oh yeah, man.
Holy crap.
We had a half-inch tape for 8 tracks. And then later I got to work in a 24-track recording studio, which was 2-inch tape. So the reel of tape was that wide. It's about that big, like that big around. And you could store maybe three average songs on it. And the reel of tape cost, I don't even remember, hundreds of dollars, many hundreds of dollars. So it was like, you saved up and saved up just so you could buy a reel of tape so you could put down 3 songs, when you were excited about it too. Because, of course, editing back then, that was the nightmare. No random access editing, no digital editing. It was all analog. So if I wanted to edit a tape, I used the razor blade and tape.
No wonder you're jaded.
Yeah, of course. You had to learn all kinds of tricks for hearing where the beginning of a sound started and ended. that teaches you an awful lot about sound.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize you're absorbing it. It's the best way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Just put your hands on it,
Yes.
play with it, let the organic process take over. Yeah.
That's how I know anything.
Yeah,
right
exactly. Everything that you really learn and understand, guarantee you it wasn't taught to you.
Yeah.
It's just something that you went after because I must know how this works.
Of course.
And that's been the driving factor in everything I've ever done.
Oh, we're at the studio. The first studio, you built it with John Tobacco.
I did, yeah. It was in his bedroom in his parents' house. He took his bed out and all of his furniture, because who needs that? And we put in, I think we kept the dresser because it was a flat surface to put a mixing console on. It was pretty large. We put a mixing console on there, 8-track reel-to-reel tape machine, giant reels going around. And then a bunch of what's called outboard audio equipment, which was, nowadays they're basically just plugins for your software, but back then they were physical pieces of hardware.
Wow.
You know, so like we had a noise reduction system, which was 8 channels worth of noise reduction. That took up 2 full rack spaces. So like in your AV rack, you've got your Fostex wireless mic system or whatever, and you've got like a couple of outlet strips that are mounted there for neatness, and maybe some lights come out of it so that you can see what's below it in the dark. And
So you guys built whole racks.
so that rack, yeah, those racks, I got the rack for free. I don't remember from where. I don't think I stole it. I'm pretty sure somebody gave. I might have stolen it.
Statute of limitation. Doesn't matter anymore. He stole it.
This is Trump's reality, man. I can make it up as I go. There are no rules here anymore. What? Not even the laws of physics apply in Trump's world. All right. So anyway, yeah. So I had, you'd have an outboard rack. That would be like, where your reverb unit was. And nowadays you just dial it up. You go to your reverb setting and you can build the reverb by shaping it with your, grabbing part. I mean, back then, it was completely abstract. There was no way to relate what you saw in the, there were no visuals. There were no displays. It was just numbers. So you had to understand like, oh, pre-delay, right? That means the amount of time from the attack to when the reverb actually starts. And you had to understand like, what decay rates were and, velocity. You had to understand about that. Like, so, and the only way you did all that was you just kept playing with the knob that said velocity and going, oh, so when that increases, I hear it sounds bigger. Okay, it sounds smaller when I do this. So then you automatically map that in your brain. So now you suddenly understand what that term means.
So when you went to school for music, it had nothing to do with
no
the
technical stuff. No, not at all.
Wow.
Are you kidding me? I studied the classic composers. I majored in theory and composition. So I learned how to do things like write music for every kind of instrument. Mm-hmm. I did orchestration where I had giant charts and they would give us a melody and say, here, I want you to orchestrate this melody for 2 trombones, a French horn, 2 violins, a flute, this. And so what you were taught was how all those instruments worked, what their ranges were, how to write for them, what they're capable of and they're not capable of.
Is that still in your noggin?
Oh yeah, that stuff doesn't go away.
Wow.
But that's, again, it wasn't taught to me though. I just understood it because I listened to it. I know what range a flute sounds good in. It doesn't sound good below this note and it doesn't sound really good above that note. I know that in this range, a regular B flat flute sounds good in that range. And it's only from listening to it. It's the same as you would do. Look,
All right, yeah, if it's out of tune, it's out of tune, right?
More than that, that you're not, that well, actually, nowadays I was going to say, like, you're not going to play drums with your guitar, but you are going to play drums with your guitar. In those days, like, it was really obvious. Like, you're not going to, you would use sticks to hit a drum, right? Because it just makes sense, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's just translated a different way. But it's the same knowledge. It comes organically from listening and forming an opinion about what you like and what you don't like. So you go for the stuff you like and you try to avoid the stuff you don't like. I mean, it's that simple. It sounds really like big and complex. The only reason it sounds that way is because I've been doing it so much longer. That's all. That's the only difference.
So from that first studio, when did you end up going into a actual professional studio?
Well, I mean...
The journey was long.
The journey was long and tiring, son. No. I went to, I built that small studio and I was able to produce enough material in those tiny studios to impress people that owned bigger studios to let me come in there and do stuff. That's all. So I made it into a 24-track studio, which was the standard for a long time. So, rock bands like Queen and like I don't know, I picked Queen because I know that they're still kind of popular. But pretty much any band that you listen to that came out of the 80s or 90s, they were all recorded in 24-track studios.
Thank you, Les Paul, for the multi-tracking.
Yes, thank you, Les Paul. You literally invented the recording studio.
I remember
Single-handedly.
watching a documentary where they were talking about how some people were listening to his music for the first time, and he was explaining to them that it was all him.
Yeah.
And they were just like,
Huh?
yeah, it was
Well,
like,
that's not
this is not
possible.
possible.
Sorry, but as far as I know, you can't be in more than one place at one time. But yeah, they didn't realize his. Yeah, right. They had no idea. They couldn't conceptualize it.
So you were in a 24-track.
I sat watching him do that interview as a little kid and went, "Yep, I can see that. I get it. It just made so much sense."
You were aware of him back then?
I was aware. Well, obviously, it was well past the time I was born. It was old even for me to be watching it. But I remember hearing him explain multi-tracking and thinking, "Oh yeah, this is so obvious." And then my father didn't realize that his machine, he had a tape machine, that you could do something called sound on sound, where you could play back one track, let it bleed through the speakers, and then add something to it. So now you have two things on the track. Then you could play those back, add a third thing, have three things. And you could build a song multi-tracking without having a multi-track.
How was the sound
recorder.
quality on that?
Terrible.
Yeah.
It got worse and worse and worse. The first thing that you recorded just became so quiet you could barely hear it in the distance. So then I got good. I realized, oh, so what I should do is the loudest, most percussive thing first. So you'd record the drums first, because they had the ability to last for a long time. Then bass, and you slowly build up, and you take the voice is always the last thing, you know. And that you instinctively understand. Now that becomes like the standard in any studio for recording all of a sudden.
Wow.
If you're going to multi-track. Lots of bands are just recorded live. They don't multi-track, but yeah.
Bands record, you think, live now still? Like the whole band in the
Sometime-
studio?
Yeah,
all
yeah.
at
In
once?
fact, it was always the preferred method. Most bands I recorded, that's what they really wanted to play together. We isolated them so we could get control over the sound.
Okay.
But they played all at the same time.
Well, I can't remember what I was watching where it was another documentary about a band and they insisted on being in the same room because of just their vibe.
The feel, yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah, they just can't achieve the same level of excitement. And I understand. I mean, that's in terms of a band. I mean, they're used to being creative together simultaneously. They feed off one another in a live situation. But there are plenty of artists out there who prefer to just. Stevie Wonder never did that. You know, I mean, Stevie Wonder did Songs in the Key of Life, which is 2 albums of maybe the best songs ever recorded in history. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. And when he came to the studio, he had it all in his head. So every part, like, he just knew it. So he came in and, like, to the engineers, he goes, "Hey, I have a great idea for an album. You know, it might be 2 albums. It's a lot of songs. I already know exactly what I want to do." And at this point, he was already famous enough that they just let him do whatever he wanted. And he would come in and play the drums for every song for a 2-album set with no other instruments, just him playing the drums. And the engineers are sitting there going, well, he's playing this great drum track, but they don't hear what he hears in his head. They don't know what it's going to. Then he comes back in and lays the bass down for every single song. Then he comes back in and plays the guitar for every single. Then he plays all the keyboards, clavinet, all this other stuff. And they're just hearing this thing coming up out of nowhere, this monster.
What year did he do that?
Oh, shoot. I'm going to say 77, 78, something like that. But Songs in the Key of Life. I mean, you want the greatest lesson you could ever have in music creation, music production, artistry. The guy did every single thing himself. I think he even mixed a couple of the songs.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and without the use of his eyes, so just goes to show you.
At some point, you ended up making your own music.
Yeah, well, I was always a composer. I always wanted to do that stuff. So, but I was into stuff that was eclectic and weird. You know, I was really into Frank Zappa and people like that. So I recorded stuff. I guess the single most influential band in my life, though, is Steely Dan. Just because they were like, for me, I was really into jazz when I was young, so they were like an amazing. They crossed me over from jazz to popular music, because I was such a jazz freak. Like, I just didn't care about anything else. A lot of my early recordings were just me trying to sound like Donald Fagen, basically, you know. And my friend John, you know, he was right there with me. I mean, he loved all the same stuff I did. So, you know, we worked really hard to try to get our own version of that sound. But John's a real artist. Like, he's He's a real composer. He's motivated to write music every day of his life. I can't say that's true for me at all. I haven't written a song in 20 years more, you know, and I don't feel compelled to do it anymore. So for me, that's when I realized I'm much more into production than being a writer.
Okay.
I like somebody else to come up with a song.
But you were straight up like, when I was young, I remember hearing an album called Go House Yourself.
Yes.
And you were straight up the front man.
I
like,
was, man.
You were rapping. You were a white guy rapping before it was cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't cool either. That's the best part. No, it was that was like at a time when like Maurice's Acid had come out, and that was like 1980. 87.
No, I love it. To this day, I love it. I do.
Yeah. Well, we would try again. We were going for that Maurice's Acid thing. We had the siren in the background and all that kind of stuff, which was we took like every cliche. Yeah. House music. We were into it. So, you know, and yeah, we did it basically on a dare. Somebody said, I said, oh come on, I could do this in a weekend. You know, so like something came on the radio. They were like, you cannot. I'm like, I was so annoyed. So we basically just got stoned out of our minds and went into the studio on a Saturday. I wrote a rap while I was recording all the other parts. And I just went in there and freaking knocked
Sorry,
it.
there are people today that can't compete with what you wrote.
I did not come close to doing this myself. There were two total geniuses there with me.
Okay.
You know, John was with me, which of course he's amazing. And then there's a guy named Chris Patty. You know, Chris and I have an on-again, off-again relationship, but the guy's a total genius. I mean, he could do anything in the recording studio. And he is one of the most gifted musicians you will ever meet in your life. I mean, truly gifted. Like, he plays everything equally well. You can't decide what he's a better virtuoso at.
Go House Yourself.
Yeah.
You guys were going to try and do it, or did you do a music video?
Oh yeah, man.
Distinctly remember.
Oh, we did do a music video. Yes,
that you were talking about.
We shot
at
it
the time,
ourselves.
trying to get it on MTV.
Yeah, that didn't work out. We shot it ourselves. We did have it edited at an amazingly high-end video complex. Again, it was a connection of Chris's, and Chris actually did the editing, I think, of the video. Yeah, man, and it everywhere but here it was really successful. Like in Puerto Rico, we were like number 3. In Italy, we were number 1. We had a number 1 video of me doing a rap in Italy. How bizarre is that? We were big in the Orient. We were big like many major countries.
This is
amazing. The record did like number 1 in a bunch of different countries.
Okay, so I was going to ask that you charted
all over the place. Yeah, we actually charted in America too. I don't remember where, but it wasn't too bad. It was the top 100, I think.
Wow.
Well, you know what? To this day, you can go to YouTube and you can find Go House Yourself. You won't find the video that we did or anything like that. But what's really weird is that all these generations of people later, every once in a while, some DJ comes across the record and goes, listen to this piece of genius from the late 80s. I'm serious. There was this DJ that came on. He's like, this is one of the greatest house records I've ever heard. No one knows who this guy is. And they put it on and they're playing it. And he has a, you know how sometimes when they're playing a record, because it's vinyl, they'll just shoot the record going around because they don't know what else to shoot. And that's on there. There's a DJ, and he's going on about it's totally brilliant. This, that, the other thing.
So if you go to YouTube, Go House Yourself, you're going to find somebody playing it.
You will find somebody doing it, and this just keeps happening. Like 10 years later, somebody finds it again.
This is what I'm talking about
It's hysterical.
too. If it was really bad, that wouldn't happen.
Oh no,
it was good. The production value was
good.
I
know that.
If you're listening to what you're saying, is
honestly,
good. Your delivery is good.
Honestly, the weakest part of it was my voice, and it's because I had never rapped before. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I had no skill for this sort of thing. But I just went in and just did whatever I wanted. And I did it in one take, though. We didn't edit any of it.
That's amazing.
So that's pretty cool.
Good job, man.
Yeah.
So did you do music after that?
Oh, yes. I did so much music after that. That was really the beginning of when I really started to do music. I probably did it for another 10 years, right up to like 2000. That's when I stopped. I had another recording studio I had built. It was really big. On Long Island, I built this place in a town called West Babylon. And it was like 2,400 square foot space. It was huge.
Nice.
I had a giant control room with digital desks. It was all digital, and it was pretty good. But I recorded a lot of bands there, just to survive, just to make enough
Anybody
money.
of note, or just local like acts that?
To be honest with you, I don't think I'm allowed to say
Okay.
any of that
Respect.
stuff. Yeah,
Understand.
Well, I did get to record a vocal for RZA. RZA came in and did something.
Nice. Shout out to the Wu-Tang.
It wasn't for one. It was as a guest on someone else's performance,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to work with a guy named IU, who was huge for a while. Granddaddy IU. He came in and did a bunch of albums. And I got to work with some other pretty famous people. But mostly what I got to do was produce talent that I really liked. And
That's what's most important.
That was my
It doesn't matter
favorite
how
thing.
famous anybody is to me, it's whether I believe in
Right.
the art or not.
Shout out to Larry Nacht.
Shout out, Larry.
You're a genius. I wish you had never gone away. But anyway, so yeah, I did an album with Larry that I was really, really proud of. And I had been really inspired by people like Beck at the time who were doing taking loops, basically once again stealing work that pioneered and invented by black people.
If done properly, it worked. Like when
it could work
when
well.
Kanye
Otherwise,
did
it could be
Gold
really,
Digger and
Yeah.
what is his name? Jamie Foxx was
Yes.
singing the Ray Charles part.
Yes.
Believe it or not to say that I didn't know who Ray Charles was by
Right,
that
yeah,
point,
yeah, yeah.
but I wasn't like listening to it.
No.
When I heard that song,
Yeah.
I went out and bought a Ray Charles album.
Yeah. See. Right,
So it's
exactly.
not necessarily like you're not. Yeah, they're sampling or whatever, but when you hear that, if it's good
Yeah.
and you like it
Yeah.
and you're really into music, you're gonna go out and find out
Oh,
who
sure.
and what that is.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, I'm not. I have nothing against sampling at all. I mean, it was my favorite thing to do. One of my favorite things. So yeah, no, the album was built around sort of taking loops and stuff, and then I got to do a lot of vocals on it because I wanted to do these. I was trying to do a lot of this throwback stuff to sort of like kitschy sort of stuff from the '60s and '70s, like the Partridge Family. So I was like taking an arrangement and doing it the way the Partridge Family would do it, and I was doing like really thick 6-part harmony behind it, where I got to sing all the parts.
Does this still exist?
Yeah, it still exists. The album's around.
With that, what you said you did music for 10 years up to about 2000.
Yep. And then a mishap in financing caused the dissolution of the recording studio, and it was taken away. I can't go into that either, but anyway, that disappeared. At that point,
It was like someone took away the artist's palette.
sort of, and I was already pretty tired and exhausted. I had really burned myself out working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know what it's like, dude.
Yeah.
Where you just eventually you just become burned. I mean, you just can't do it anymore. So it was a combination of that, having our studio broken into, and we got robbed once, and some other stuff. You know what it's like, man.
I
It's a tough
totally
life.
know what it's like.
Especially where our studio was built, the neighborhood. I went to sleep to gunfire at night, and it was tough, man. I had a shotgun in bed with me, kind of stuff like that. It was tough, but it did teach me a lot. When that was all done, I felt like it was time to move on. My other huge passion was computers, and always had been, and I just decided to go ahead and get certified. I went to school for a summer and got some kind of a certification which helped me get a job in the computer industry. That's where I have been ever since. Then I got a job through a friend to work for Rolling Stone magazine.
Ooh.
I went there. I went to Manhattan. And they published, at the time, a company called Wenner Media, named after Jan Wenner, who's the founder of Rolling Stone. They produced Men's Journal, Us Weekly, and Rolling Stone magazines. And I worked there for 15 years. I helped build the computer infrastructure back end. I built their what's called virtual environment. I built that.
Wow.
Got to do that stuff. And then they sold out. They sold everything off
To
a massive media company who owns pretty much every magazine in the world right now. He's bought them all up. Can't remember American Media International, AMI.
wow.
So he bought. Well, I know he bought Us Weekly and Men's Journal. I don't know if he bought. I don't think he bought Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone was purchased by somebody else. Apparently, it's doing very well again, which is great. Happy to hear that. I always liked their original format. I was sorry when the format changed, but anyway, that's another story. So that's it. That's my life. The entire IT department got laid off, along with pretty much everybody else. They gave me an unbelievably great severance package, which I'm still very grateful for, and it allowed me to live for 6 months, with no problems. And then I took some extra time off, and eventually I got a job, and now I'm back doing computer stuff again. I'm very happy, and believe it or not, it's an extremely creative job, and it uses all the parts of myself that I like, and
That's what's important.
so it's very satisfying work.
Because I can't imagine you not having some sort of creative outlet.
Right.
I
I definitely need to. Yeah, totally.
If someone were to take away all my ability to create video
Right.
production, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
It's like, what is an artist without his paints, and his
Yeah.
brush? And
Right.
that's when I decided I'm going to do all this myself, or at least set myself up where no matter whether somebody says I can or not.
Either way, you've got your tools.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear you.
So there's no chance of you hopping on a record someday in the future, or
No.
helping anybody
I don't think so.
produce an album?
I
or
wouldn't
a
say that.
track?
I'll never say never, but I don't.
You're not.
I don't have any
seeking it out.
plans for it. No, I'm really not. No. But it was a whole other time in my life. I don't regret it for a second. None of it. But
Well, I'm glad you did it, because you gave me many hours of awesome listening.
great, man. I'm glad to hear that.
Super entertaining.
Yeah, well, there's tons of stuff out there.
And you're super talented.
Thanks.
And I'm not just saying that because you're my own.
No, I know. I believe you.
I really like your work.
Thanks. Very nice of you.
And now
Likewise.
I challenge you to a game of Connect Forces.
I will lose.
They all do.
Let's meet tonight's players. Versus. Let's play Connect 4.
Round one.
I know you have to get for one.
You're serious. You've never played Connect Forces. Not once.
Yeah. I don't play any games. I just don't.
It's all right. I won't need it. I'll be done before that.
No, I know you will. I have no doubt.
There you go. Go ahead.
All right. Classic mistake.
Is it?
You fell right into your trap that I didn't make. Connect 4 is too hard and you just won. Good job.
I didn't.
You did.
I don't see 4.
Really?
Let me really look at it. 1, 2, 3.
No, actually you don't. Yeah, you're right. Not yet.
Now I
You
did.
Now you do.
Round two.
He's doing the speed racing method, which has worked in the past. It has, actually. Somebody,
Did you take your slow drugs? Wait, let me just put 2 in. Just kidding.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, good job.
You are a daredevil, sir. Thank you very much for doing
It's
this.
my pleasure.
Seriously.
Yeah, man.
I mean, this is going to go down in history. One day, whether the show ever is anything or not, this is going to be big for our family.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think a lot of people, I know I didn't know half of the stuff. that
I'm the
you told me
heaviest
about.
one in my family, so I'm the one that's big for it.
This guy. You should do stand-up. I'm going to work on it. Hopefully one day you'll see Nicholas J DiMauro live at the garden.
The garden. Just wherever that is. Just the garden. All right.
Thank you again. I
Yes,
appreciate
Bretta,
it.
no doubt.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Peace.
Tune in next time for another episode of Connect,
Connect
4.
four.
Nice!